Hi, this is Cousin Russ. This is a follow-up to my previous recording on how and why I merge files within Family Tree Maker 2014 or Family Tree Maker 3 for the Mac. Um, this is the cleanup of what I do after I do the merge. I've done all the data entry stuff, but I want to show you the final view of what I did with the data that came in with this record. This is the record that is on the screen now that's came in from Ancestry. And one thing that I showed you is that I copied and pasted the data that is, sorry about that, that is down here. I copied and pasted that. I copied it from the record. But this is the head of household who I merged, and there's some information that were on this record that were very helpful to me. Now let me get rid of that screen and go to Family Tree Maker. This is the census record in the citation, or in the source group for the record that I just brought in. It is not in the template format, but that's where I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it into the template format. But the first thing that I do after I do a merge, as I said in my previous recording, that I normally come here first. So I'm going to take it from that point of view. And what I'm going to do is click on the notes. And what I do in the notes is I paste the data that was on that previous screen into the notes, and I put a paragraph break here so that I can come back and look at it. It's data that's already in the image. I can get very quickly back to the image with this link down here in the lower right hand corner. It says view online, view source online, or this globe. Both of those will take me right back to the record, but that's assumed that I'm online, and I normally am. But the same information is right here in the database. There's a place for it. I put it there just to have it readily available. Now, what I did is I looked at the top of the record itself, and I completed the citation that I need to. This is not the citation that would have come in with the merge, but I add to the citation detail the local jurisdiction, the supervisory district, the enumeration district, the sheet number, the line number, the street name. If there was a house number, I would have put it there. It's not there. It just says the street and the household, and it does have a microfilm number, but I keep it in the citation. I do have the image so that I don't have to. You can see right here, there's an icon that shows you that I have the image. We'll come back to that in a minute. But the other thing that I added was I put the access date just here because I will have to copy and paste that later. It's also a handy reminder when I looked at that record. I've unchecked these two boxes because I don't want the data that's in this field, nor the URL to be in the citation. I have it in a program. I can see it anytime that I want, but I don't want it in the citation. This is the free form format for this reference note. I don't want that. I want the template. So I created a template for Ohio and this county, and that is the template format. There's a little notation here that says it's in the template format. There was nothing in this citation, so I'm going to delete it. So the only citation that's in this source group is this citation, which is what I want. So there's my citation, and there's the record, the head of household, and there is the citation. What's missing in the reference note is within the parentheses with the URL, and that's the date accessed information. I just copy that, I Control C, and then I move my cursor just inside the closed parentheses and I paste it. So now I have an evidence explained, as close as I can get it, an evidence explained citation for this record. It's as simple as that. It took me a couple steps, but it is now in the format that I wanted. All of the information that I pulled from that census record, and you can see that this record gave me 66 facts that are linked to this citation. So let's go look at what I did with that. I'm going to go to the head of household, and I get there by double clicking on his name. And it takes me right to, well, actually that's the son. Here is the head of household. So here is what I have, and this is the name that came in with a citation with the record, and there's the citation. What I added was the address. It didn't have a house number, but it does tell me Walnut Street. So I put the date of the census, which is on the census record, the date that the census was taken. I have been doing that consistently. And the reason why I did that, I learned it not too long ago. I had one household that appeared in two census records. When I went back and I looked at the sheet itself, it told me that the first record that I found was done on one date, and the second was a different date, which was about 2 weeks later. The family had moved across the river between the two times that the census records were taken. So I record the date that's on the sheet. The official date for the census is the first of the month, which is fine, but my personal reasons is I put the full date. So what I also picked up from that, that came from the census record that says he was born in Germany about 1863. This death information came from Find a Grave Records. By the way, the address as a padlock means it's private. If I upload this tree, the address will not be seen. It's privatized. The marriage status, that came off the record. I mentioned that before. I record that. I've learned that I want to keep track of that, especially for females. The occupation, he was a salesman, and the industry was beanery, and I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. If I get time, and it's important to me, I will go find that out. But that's all information that I picked up for him off the census record. During the merge, it gave me this description field. Now, I accept that. When I first saw this, I cleaned out the description field. But what I realized that when I do a report, I can control what fields are in the report. So in a report that I generate that would include the residence fact, I just do not include the fact description. I just put the date and the place, and I remove a check mark on the description. So that information is not seen. Now, this happens to be the head of household. So it just says resident or relationship to head of household is head. That's good information for me able to see on my screen. That does not mean it's going to be recorded on any report that I would generate it. One other thing that I do, and let me bring up that census record again, is that I copy from the name all the way down to the date, the age of the last child. I copy and I paste it into the notes section for the residence fact. So, and there's a number 1 in this column right here, which is it says there's the notes there. So there is a transcription of what was on that record. It's not displayed. This padlock is active, which means it's hidden. It's not displayed. I have access to it. I can see it. So I have that here. So if I decide later that the ownership of the house is important, I don't have to go redo something because it's right here in the transcription. So let's go back. I said one thing that was important to me was the father and mother for the adults. We know the children. So here's what I did for the father of the head of household. I don't know what his name is. I am assuming for this point in time that his surname is the son's surname. That may be later that I'm going to be proven wrong, but I assume 5 underscores because that's how I handle unknown names. 5 underscores, the same surname, and I put a citation on the sex, and the census record says that he was born in Germany. So there's a citation, and there's the image. I also put down here in the research notes that I got this in the 1910 census today. This gentleman's wife is unknown. I don't know her first name. I don't know her last name. What is important that I picked up is that she was born in Germany. I may find other records later on that gives me more information about where in Germany at the moment, but I want to capture it because it may help me later on. And I also have my my research notes. I probably won't mention research notes again, but each entry that I made has the research note and it was a research log, and I just copied and pasted from everybody that was in this merge. So that is the head of household, and I'm not going to go through everybody on that record. I just want to point out a couple of things that I did see working on this. There's the wife, and what was important to me was that on each fact that I brought in from that census record will have that same date. So as of April 18th, she had 4 children. There are 4 children living. The record did not say that she had an occupation. The record did say that she was married. She was living on Walnut Street. And here are the research log for her. As you can see, most of the data for her to this point has been find a grave. I was doing a lot of hints off of the index from Ancestry.com for Find a Grave, as well as the Find a Grave website itself. These are from the Find a Grave website. This entry right here was from Ancestry hint. So I had actually found information several times on her from the Find a Grave website, and then I found a hint from the Find a Grave index. There was a new person in the record that I hadn't seen before, and that was Frida. As you can see in the research log, I've only found her one time. I have the same information that I brought in with the merge. All this was here. There was no additional information. The only thing I did add is that she was single in 1910. Again, I have the notes for where she was living. And I was curious about why I wasn't finding her with the other family members, and I won't show all the screens, but all the family members from Carl were all from Find a Grave, where I found the data initially. So I was curious why I hadn't seen this specific person before. But if I go over here to the hints, which is still on the screen on the right hand side, if I click on that, what I do see is that there's the 1900 census. So if I go back and look at the 1900 census for the same family, I would have picked her up. I hadn't been there yet. But there is something that's important in the 1920 census, which is highlighted, and also the California Death Index and the Social Security application and claims records. Those are hints for her that she got married. So it's and she is not in the same place where the rest of the family was. The family was in Ohio. So it could be that it appears to me that she was not buried with the family as to where I found the family in Find a Grave. Remember that I was finding all the family with Find a Grave, and she wasn't there, which tells me that when I do research for her or follow hints for her, that I will find her in Pennsylvania as opposed to Ohio, which is where this family is buried. That I will find her with a Find a Grave maybe when I saw that she was married on those other hints. So I may find her that way. The other one that I want to mention was the son, the youngest son. Now, the census record calls him Carl. All the other records that I have, and you see on the right-hand side, they're all from Find a Grave. What I believe happened, and I may be wrong, but this is my current thinking, is that the enumerator assumed that he was a junior, although the record did not show a junior, but they used the same name as the head of household. That makes logical sense. The fact is that all of the other records are from Find a Grave, which may or may not be correct. But for the moment, my current thinking is that he was Eugene C. as opposed to Carl E. That's just my current thinking. Having said that, I made a note. I went down to the task list, my to-do list, and I made a notation, and I called it a conflict because it is conflicting information. And I said Find a Grave records show that it's Eugene C. The 1910 census calls it Carl E. So I'm going to have some options, but I have a breadcrumb that I can follow. Now, somebody might say, well, you got 6 citations from 6 different places, but think about Find a Grave and think about how those records are created, and you will find it's got from one source, and that is the website itself, the Find a Grave website for him. If I go over here and were to go to that website and look to his burial, I will find the data that then gets linked to the other records that I found here. So it's the Find a Grave memorial for him has the data that it's then linked to these others. So it still could be conflicting information. I made that note in the to-do list that there is a conflicting information, but my current thinking is that because the census taker didn't call him Carl Jr., which most of them will, that he just assumed and wrote his name out, Carl E, as opposed to Eugene C. That's my current thinking. I've got one more thing to do, so I've highlighted the facts that I pulled in from that one record, how I handled it, and I just did this to all four children, the husband, the wife's parents, the wife's parents. Let me just show you the wife's parents are 5 underscores, both the first and second name, because I don't know. What is important is that her parents were both born in Germany. So that for future reference, that's going to help me, I believe. The other thing that I haven't cleaned up, I cleaned up the citation. The other thing that I haven't done is cleaned up the media file, that image that came in. So I'm going to go to the media workspace, and there are all of the images that I have in this file. So how am I going to find that image that I just brought in? Well, the nice thing about web merges is that they all end up in one place, because you don't, when you do a merge, the image gets dumped in one spot. Let me show you where that is. List by all media. I'm going to do the pull down menu, media category. When you bring in a census record or any other record that comes in from the merge, it ends up in the uncategorized category. And there is that record. Now, I don't like the way this record is laid out, so I am going to type in the caption, Carl. In fact, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to highlight his name. I'm going to cut, Control C, Control V, put a space, dash space, 1910 Federal Census. And the other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on the image. I'm going to rename, change the file name to his surname underscore first name underscore middle name dash, and I've talked about this before. I'm separating the name, the year with a dash, and I'm going to call it federal underscore census, and get rid of the stuff at the end with the exception of JPG. So when I just renamed it, and it'll be sorted. So any other image that I have with him external to Family Tree Maker will be all sorted the same way in File Explorer or Windows Explorer. The only other thing that I need to do is I'm going to put that image into a category. I go over here to Edit, and that is the Census category, and I click OK. It is now in the Census Record category. These are all sorted by first name in the category because that's the sort feature that I have selected in the Tools menu. That was a lot of work, perhaps, but it's really a bunch of mouse clicks. But I've captured the data off of that record the way I have talked about in Evernote. Let me see if I can bring, there's that Evernote, and it was the 1910 census. So I captured all the data that was in here. This is how in Evernote is how I know how to set up the information for the citation and the file naming. All of that is in Evernote so that I know this is my brains. Evernote's my brain, so I know how to do repeatedly what I just demonstrated in this recording. Now, I know that's a lot of work, but that's how I have chosen to handle this process. and I have I captured the data that I want, and I've made notes. I have a research log that you can see right here. I haven't any tasks, and I already took care of that task, except the one task that I have conflicting information for Eugene. I don't consider that I have conflicting information for Frida, because I think that as time goes on, that I will find out that she gets married later, and she probably is buried someplace other than where this family is. Hope that helps. Have a great day.